Welcome to Creative Minds Smart Money, the podcast where creativity and business smarts collide. I'm your host, Samantha Eck, bookkeeper, business coach, and your go-to guide for building the creative business of your dreams. Whether it's mastering your money, streamlining your systems, or growing your business, I'm here to share insights that empower you to thrive. Plus, I'll be bringing in industry experts to dive into all aspects of entrepreneurship, so you can turn your passion into profit without losing your creative spark. Let's get started. You're listening to the Creative Minds Smart Money podcast. Today, I'm hanging out with KP and Jessie, a dynamic, color-obsessed duo from Inkpot Creative. They specialize in supporting creative wedding photographers who are ready to break away from the ordinary and build bold, attention-grabbing brands. As loud and colorful outliers in the design world, KP and Jessie know firsthand what it's like to go against the grain. They partner with photographers who aren't afraid to express themselves boldly and build personal brands that can't be ignored. With a focus on creating strategic, unforgettable visuals, KP and Jessie are passionate about helping photographers stand out with strategic personal brands that people can't help look away from. So excited you two are here. How are you today?
So good. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. So I would love to know what led you guys to become a design studio.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started Inkpot Creative back in 2020. I actually came up with a name because I wanted to hide my initials in it. So there's like a KP in the name. And I actually started out doing social media management. And I very quickly realized I like doing my own social media, but genuinely don't enjoy doing it for other people. And then ended up going back to my roots. So I originally had dreamed of working in a publishing house doing like YA and children's book design. And so I've always loved layout design and ended up finding that website design is very similar. It's just like an interactive version of a layout. So I ended up leaning into brand and website design. And by 2022, I had gotten to the point where I was getting really booked out. And at the time, Jesse had a full time job. And then that's actually when Jesse ended up joining me, just because, again, like I really needed the help, was definitely pulling like too many hours. I'm sure a lot of other entrepreneurs like totally understand that. But yeah, I'll let Jesse take it away from there.
Yeah, so I joined back in 2022 and picked up everything from scratch. I have a degree in psych. I was not intending on doing anything related to this at all, but wasn't really happy with what I was doing. And KP needed help. And I was like, you know what, let me give this a shot. So picked up learning everything about website development, blogging, helping KP run the business or kind of do anything for clients that needed to be done. And honestly, now I couldn't see myself doing anything else. I can't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah.
So it was definitely the right move for me.
I love that. I feel like once you get into that entrepreneurial phase, you're like, I can't go back to a corporate job.
Exactly.
So I know that our topic of choice today is blogging. So blogging can seem really overwhelming for a lot of business owners. But let's start with the basics. What's the first step for someone who wants to blog but feels unsure about where to begin? And how can creatives get started with blogging without feeling like they need to be a professional writer?
So, our advice for the best place to start with blogging is taking a lot of the questions or things that you talk about with clients on an everyday basis and turning those into blog posts. So, if people are coming to you with questions, you notice all of your clients are asking the same question, or even some of the FAQs on your website. If your clients are asking those questions to you, odds are other people are going to be asking them and they're going to be Googling them. So you don't have to think like you don't have to completely break the mold or feel like you have to be super creative in the content that you're creating. A lot of it's just questions that you're getting asked a lot or recent projects that you've done. That is a great place to start when it comes to it. And then honestly, you really don't need to be a professional writer to write blogs. People aren't expecting to you look at a blog post and read it like it's a novel. It is
Yeah.
really casual as long as you really just want to show off your personality. You want to have, and I feel like we'll talk about it a lot, but like a human first approach to it and really just share the information that you have in the best way that you can. It's totally okay if your brand personality and your voice is really funny, throw some jokes in there. If it's more serious, you can be a little more, maybe not totally corporate, but like a little more straightforward with what you're saying. You don't necessarily have to feel like you're writing a fiction novel or something. You have to be super creative and throw no. You just write how you would normally talk to your clients, and that's what's going to connect with people.
Absolutely. I love that. So I know that when you create that consistent high quality content, you can get some sustainable growth from that. So how does blogging fit into that? And what role does it play in driving long-term traffic to a business? In addition to that, why is consistency so important and how can business owners build a blogging routine that doesn't really feel overwhelming?
Yeah, absolutely. So our favorite thing about blogging is that it is so sustainable because you can spend like just a few hours writing a post a day. And trust me, the more you write posts, the quicker it'll get. So like if it does take you a while now, it is totally okay. Like we have definitely gotten like our time writing down over the years, but it's sustainable because you can write one post a day in a few hours and then it can continue to get you traffic for like 2+ years. That's like one of our favorite parts about blogging. And over time, that traffic is really going to snowball as well. And the more you write on a specific topic, the more you're going to start to rank for like all of the posts very closely related to that. And then one of the cool things too is that consistency, as you would normally think of it, isn't necessarily required. It's one of those things more so that like the more you post and the more you kind of get into like the rhythm of posting, the more traffic growth you'll see and the more Google will see you as an expert, especially if you're using the right keywords. But even if you only have the time to write like one post a month, it's totally okay. It's not like social media where you have to post every single day and your post, if you're lucky, will
Yeah.
last a few hours and still be getting likes. For us, we've definitely seen 2 posts a month tends to be, like, the most sustainable and kind of, like, the easiest to stick to. Most of our clients tend to see results around, like, the 12 post mark, so around, like, 6 months in, but, yeah, you really do not need to be posting that often to get results, which is one of the coolest parts of blogging.
Yeah, and I think it's probably important to remember as well that you want it to have that really good high quality content. You don't just want to pump out something that nobody's going to want to read. You want it to have that certain amount of quality.
Yeah, absolutely. This is 100% a like quality over quantity type endeavor. And if you spend a little bit more time to have something that really answers the question that you're trying to answer, that's going to work out way better for you than just like putting something out there just to like get it out there.
Yes. So speaking of quality, how can business owners create blog content that's valuable to their audience but also helps them stand out as an authority in their industry? And how do you balance providing free value while still showcasing your expertise?
So, one of our favorite things to do is to focus a lot on educational type posts. I know a lot of like your blog is a great place to show off your portfolio and talk about specific like projects that you've worked with or clients that you've worked with, but balancing that with educational posts about literally anything that has to do with your topic, any small thing that you help your clients with, anything that you walk through on a day to day basis or throughout the project, all of those things are going to be really helpful to anyone in that kind of planning process or the pre booking process that may be like not ready to fully book you or start the project or we're starting to get things together. So, what do I actually need? All of those posts are super, super helpful. They tend to be questions that a lot of people are searching and that are really good, just like general content posts to have on your site. They also tend to be places where you can make yourself stand out by sharing hot takes or being like, look, this is what I've seen over the years, or here's why this works, and explaining your process a little more. All of that is going to be those things that kind of make you stand out as the expert and stand out from everyone else who's writing on the same topic. So we would definitely say trying to go towards those educational posts, maybe even taking a look at some other of the top posts that are ranking for whatever you're trying to write about, and make sure that you have something that's different in there, some unique perspective, some unique
Yes.
angle or experience that you've had to be like, okay, this is all great. Obviously, there's some tips that like it's going to be the same across the board. Like everybody's going to say XYZ, but try and throw in something there that is a little bit different. That's going to make you stand out. People are going to see that and be like, "Oh, that's a really cool tip. I didn't even think about that." And then all of that personal
Yes.
content is going to help you be seen as an expert. It's going to help Google see you as an expert, which is what we ultimately want.
Yeah, I love that. I think that so many people too are so scared of giving away too much
Mhm.
information. But I feel like in this day and age, the more information you give away before we actually get on a call with someone or work with someone, the better off you are because so many people are scared to work with others who they have no idea what they're about or if they're even an expert. Because there's so many people out there who say they're an expert, but they might not know as much information as someone else.
Yeah, your blog is a great place to weed out the people that aren't the right fit for you and bring in the people who are. So it's just an extra little filter that you have with every touch point that they're going to have with their business. And ultimately, if all of the people coming into our discovery calls or whatever we have are perfect fit clients, like that's amazing. That's what we want.
Absolutely. So speaking of perfect fit clients, let's talk about lead generation. How can business owners use their blogs to actually convert readers into clients? And are there specific call to actions or strategies that have worked really well for you when it comes to turning readers into leads?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, like our goal is to actually try to be converting the people who are reading our posts. Blogging is very like top of funnel in that it's basically just a traffic driver to your site. So you also have to remember that like your brand has to be great, your copywriting has to be great, your website also has to be great in order to actually convert everybody. But there are definitely a few things that we've seen work really well. The first one is actually just to make sure you have freebies that you're putting in your post. You want one that's actually related to your post though. The easiest way to do that is to actually just think about the different categories you tend to write on a lot. So in our business, that's branding, website design, and then SEO and blogging. So we actually just have one freebie for each of those different topics. And what we'll do is we'll actually create a reusable block in WordPress. If you're on WordPress, this is really easy. You can turn it into a reusable block. And then anytime you want to just put that freebie into any of your posts, you can just add that block in. And if you update it, it'll update across all of your posts for you. And the cool thing about that is that then you're just funneling people directly into your email platform where you can continue to nurture them over time. And then, of course, too, you want to make sure you do have that call to action. You can subtly put like different calls to action throughout your article. So, for instance, in the intro, you can always be like, as a copywriter who specializes in working with brand and website designers, just like subtly nodding to what you do throughout your entire article is going to help. And then also making sure you're actually like specifically calling out what you do. Our favorite place to do that is just down in the conclusion of the article. And then always like making sure you're linking to like either your services page or your contact page so people can learn more.
Yes, I love that. I think that that's so important to note too, because I think a lot of people will just write content and not necessarily put that call to action in there. And then you're not really using that for lead generation. You're just writing a blog for the purpose of being educational, which isn't bad. But if you want to generate leads from it, you got to have that call to action.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, we always want to have more avenues that people can reach out to us and find us and stay on our website longer. So it definitely is. We see it a
Yes.
lot where it's just like, that's the end of the article. And that you gave me a lot of great information, but you didn't give people a way to continue learning or continue talking to you or being in your circle.
Yes, absolutely. So we hear a lot about addressing pain points in content. How can business owners figure out what their audience's pain points are and how to create content that speaks directly to them? And what's the process for understanding your audience better and reflecting that in your blog posts?
I think the best way to do this is actually making sure that we are asking our potential clients or the clients that have already booked with us questions and actually like looking deeper into what they're telling us. So, a lot of times when we're looking at pain points, even why people are booking us over other people, our clients are going to tell us why they're doing it, what they're having issues with, the kind of steps to like realization of like, okay, here's why I need to do this now or invest in this now. And I think listening to them, actually gathering that information is super, super helpful and is going to give you a lot of insight into different topics that you can talk about, actually like address or kind of different areas that you might want to highlight, even different parts of your service that you can highlight and be like, look, I know a lot of people have issues with this. Here's how I directly do address that and how we focus on that and talk about it and work through it in this process.
Yes.
So I think contact forms, if we're asking people any questions on that, make sure we're actually looking at those past, glancing at it before discovery call, any notes from calls that you have. If you have any sort of
Yeah.
onboarding forms, anything like that is super great. And then even offboarding or testimonial forms, I know that we have guiding questions for our testimonial forms asking how people felt about their branded website before and like how they feel about it now. So even some of those questions after the fact, people can be like, I was really having an issue with this, or I really hated this, or this was really making me struggle in my business. And now I feel really great about it. You can use all of that to connect the dots and see where their pain points are, any objections that they might have to actually booking your services and kind of addressing those throughout your blog post because at the end of the day it's similar to the FAQs, right? If your clients are feeling those issues, if they're having those problems, odds are they're not the only people out there who are doing it. So if we can find a way to work that into questions and language that they might be typing into Google, that's a great way to check it off and like address those issues before we even start. And again, we want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's clear and direct. So we don't need to use a whole bunch of fancy language. We don't need to use a lot of like industry terms or anything like that. We can just be like, hey, you're having an issue with this, and here's how I can fix it. Here's how we can help. Here's what we'll go through. Here's what you need to do in your business to work it
Yeah.
out. And honestly, we found a lot. Sometimes it's like you said, we feel like we're giving away too much information. We don't know how much we should give away for free versus like how much we should actually wait until they're booking with us or paying us or anything like that. Sometimes if we give them all the information, they're like, wow, that was a lot. And I don't really want to go through that on my own. I'm going to hire you. So it's not always like gatekeeping because we don't want to give information away for free. Sometimes it's also just like, look, this is a really in depth process and I can help walk you through every step of it and make it really easy and take a lot of this work off of your plate because you're already dealing with so many things on your own. Like you don't need to deal with this on top of it. Having that kind of human first. I understand where you're coming from. I understand what the issue is. Here's how I can help address that specific issue and kind of work through that in a really clear way in the blog post is a great way to show your expertise, but also address those points, give them answers to questions that they have, maybe even spark other questions that they'll reach out to you and be like, oh, that's great. But like, what about this part of it? Or like, how can we do this? Anything we can do to keep the conversation going, I think is a great way to connect with people and nurture them and keep them in our circle.
Yes. I think that's so powerful too, because I think that a lot of people say that pain points are such a negative thing, but you can address pain points in a positive way and still allow someone to feel like comforted and like they're being heard without being like, hey, you need this because you don't have time to handle this.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of ways that we can address it and kind of paint it in a different light so it doesn't seem like a fully negative thing, and we're like, "Hey, we can actually help with this, and we can make your life easier," and kind of position it in that way.
Yes. So, shifting a little bit into SEO, SEO can be a little intimidating for beginners. What are some basic SEO practices that any business owner can implement to boost visibility for their blog posts? And what are the SEO fundamentals that business owners should focus on to get their content seen by more people?
Absolutely. So first things first, we always say you should have a keyword first approach. Basically, what this means is always making sure you're vetting that what you're writing about are things people are actually searching. Our favorite two places to do this are Key Search, which is the tool that we use every day. I think it's about like $14 a month. The other option is Uber Suggest. I believe they give you 3 free searches a day. So like you just if you do use their free one, just make sure you're really thinking about what topics you're searching or you're going to use up your searches really quick. But essentially just making sure everything you're writing about genuinely is something people are searching. And sometimes it can be as small as like tweaking the wording. Like Dubsado versus Honeybook might have more searches than Honeybook versus Dubsado, even though it's the same exact thing. Like you would think it's the same. So just really making sure you're doing that research beforehand. And genuinely, like I run a travel blog as well, which I grew to 75,000 monthly page views. And when I tell you the amount of articles I wrote when I started that never saw the light of day because I just wasn't doing the keyword research, and I was like, oh yeah, people are definitely searching this. Nobody was searching it. And I just don't want that for other people. So that's why I'm always like, make sure you're doing the keyword research. And of course, if there is something you still really want to write about, it's totally okay to still write it. Just know that it might not get those searches. And then also making sure you're doing all those other SEO things like writing alt text for all of your images, which is just explaining like what each image is of, doing SEO titles and meta descriptions, and also interlinking between your content so that people can very easily get around to other related things. And then, of course, too, just making sure, even though you are doing
Yes.
SEO, you're still writing human first at the end of the day. Like it is still humans that are reading it. So just making sure you aren't like keyword stuffing and are actually making things sound natural as you're writing.
Yeah, I love that. I can't remember who posted it, but there was something on Threads I saw at one point where they're like the way to write alt text. And it was like the subject, the color, and then a whole bunch of different, like literally explaining exactly what's in the photo so that that's how you can attract people to your blog as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's really not that complicated. Honestly, the biggest hurdle of it is actually we always suggest writing it for every single image. Obviously, it's gonna help with SEO, but it also is gonna play a part in accessibility. So if anyone's using a screen reader, that's what the screen reader will actually read as it goes through the post or your website pages or anything like that. Especially us working with photographers, that's a little bit of a hurdle of wanting to put 100 images in, but then needing to write
Yeah.
alt text, be like, do you really want 100 images or can we maybe scale it back a little bit so that it's a little less work for you?
Yes. So we all know about repurposing content and how that's such a time saver. Can you walk us through some creative ways to repurpose blog content across different platforms or formats? And what are some of the easiest ways to take a blog post and turn it into something like a social media post, videos, or other content?
So we love repurposing content. We repurpose literally every single thing that we put out. And the great thing about blog posts is they work as that long form piece of content that we can break down and put pretty much everywhere else that we have stuff. So if we're looking at once we've written the blog post, we love to take that blog post and turn it into an email for our newsletter. Whether this is something super simple and easy as like, hey, I have this new post. Here's what it's on. Go check it out. Or another really easy way to do it is to take each heading from the post, include it in the email as like a different heading or bullet point or whatever it is, and then write like a sentence or two about what that kind of section covers. And at the end, you can be like, if you want to learn more, if you want to read the whole story, whatever it might be, link to your blog post so that they can see all of the information in its entirety. But that's a really quick and easy way to repurpose it for your email list. Social media, obviously, huge place to repurpose everything. When we're looking at some of these kind of educational type posts, having an Instagram carousel is awesome. Again, just taking each of those headings, putting them as a point on each individual carousel. If you have the time in the room and want to do it, you can put a little description on it. Or if it's more, here's my tips for doing this, you can just put like each tip on its own slide with an image or a mark or something like that. But that's a really easy way to do it. Even again, just sharing like on your story, hey, I have this new blog post, go check it out. Super quick and easy. You can literally make templates in Canva of a couple different color combos or something that you can use to share so that it's not the same exact thing every time, but you're just basically plugging in the new title and that's all you have to do. Make it really easy on yourself.
Yeah.
Anything on Instagram Reels or TikTok, honestly, the easiest thing to do is take one of the sections that you talked about and just like face to camera, talk about that section, talk about the points that you did. You can honestly do as many sections as you want if you want to create more content and have it really easy, but you can just start with one, talk about one section, put it up on both of those. Really easy content. You've already written it, so it's a little bit hopefully I know like standing in front of our phone and talking sometimes can be a little like nervous and we're like this feels so awkward, but we've already written it out and it's something that you're already an expert on, you can talk about all the time. So it might
Yeah.
be a little bit easy and more comfortable for you to start with that. And then it might also spark some inspiration and some confidence to, work on doing more reels and TikToks in the future. But super easy. Just take one heading or a couple of headings and just talk about it on those platforms. And then again, always in all of these captions or our emails or something, be like, go click the link in my bio to read it or go check it out on my blog. Anything to keep them going and be like, here's more resources. Go look at this. So that's really great. I know Threads is popping off. We love Threads. So even taking
Yes.
hot takes or specific sentences from the blog post itself and just posting it as a thread, like go, there you go. You don't even have to edit anything. Just like, put it on there. Super quick and easy. And then if you really want help repurposing any of this is where we think ChatGPT or an AI works really well when we're looking at blog content because we can put our actual content of the entire blog post in and be like, rewrite this into an Instagram caption or an email newsletter or something like that to help us repurpose it. We wouldn't necessarily suggest writing your blog post with ChatGPT just because it's not going to sound super human first all the time. And it's not necessarily
Yes.
going to have our own ideas and takes and experience in it. But once you have it written, put it in there and being like, take my own words and just rewrite it into something shorter can be really great if you train your AI to your ChatGPT, whatever you use to be used to the same kind of format or have a system set up for it too. It can be really easy to just constantly plug the blog post in and be like, here you go, do all the things that you normally do. Here's all of the stuff that we have, and it can be really easy. So honestly, we say take your blog post, put it everywhere. Even if you have a podcast,
Yes.
pod blogs and podcasts can work either way. Write the blog post and then talk about the same topic on your podcast, or take a podcast episode, turn it into a blog post, and then work down that whole kind of funnel of everything else that we have. So really, there's no place that you can't use some part of your blog post and repurpose it.
Yeah. And I think that's so important too, is because people forget that there's nothing wrong with reusing content. And it can actually be so powerful to put it in different places because people consume and like resonate with
Mhm.
stuff in different ways. So if someone hears it, they might prefer it that way, but they might also prefer to see it visually, or they might also prefer to read it. So just having it be in all of those different formats will really help to actually get your name and your topic out there for what people want to hear.
Exactly. And odds are you have different audiences and viewers on all of the different platforms. So everyone's not going to see it everywhere. And I always like to say, if you have someone who's seeing it everywhere, it just means that they follow you everywhere and they like your content. So they're not going to be mad that they see it pop up on all of these different platforms.
Yes, exactly. So, how do you find the balance between writing blog posts that are optimized for SEO but still feel natural and engaging to your readers? And how do you ensure your content ranks in search engines without sacrificing the readability and authenticity that connects with your audience?
Yeah, absolutely. That is such a good question. And really just making sure you're always writing human first without that keyword stuffing is going to make the biggest difference. So if you're using the keyword more than once every like 500-ish words, that might look a little spammy. So really just making sure you're not overusing your keywords. And then also making sure you're always checking your search intent too. So this essentially just means if you want to write an article on Dubsado versus Honeybook, you go to Google, you type that in, and you make sure that like, what you actually want to use the keyword for is at least along the same lines of what's ranking, because that's clearly what people are expecting to see when they search. So like our best example of this is actually like from our travel blog. The difference between like where to stay in Las Vegas is so different than best hotels in Las Vegas. Best hotels in Las Vegas is going to be specific like hotels, while where to stay is going to be neighborhoods. And you might think that they're like going to be the same keyword and they're not. So just really making sure you are checking that search intent is going to make a huge difference. And then, of course, too, always making sure you're providing value, not just talking about yourself in the whole article. This is something that we actually tend to see a lot with photographers in particular. They'll tend to just talk about their clients a lot, their couples a lot, instead of actually providing like value on the venue and like answering all like the different things that someone might actually want to know about the wedding day instead of just talking about the people is going to make a huge difference, because at the end of the day, we're writing blog posts in order to educate, and you just have to keep that goal in the forefront of your mind. And then, of course, like your other goal too is to get people on your email list, get them to continue clicking, but people are going on Google in order to learn something. And then, of course, too, answering the question early on also is going to help a lot. So we've seen a huge shift in like the last year with Google's rankings. I don't know if you've noticed like Reddit's ranking really high all of a sudden, like everywhere. So just making sure that we're actually answering everything really early on in our post is going to help a lot, because at the end of the day, people are seeking for like that human content, which is why we think Reddit is very much ranking a lot higher.
Yes. Yes. And I think people are always looking to find an answer, especially some people. They just want to find an answer right away. They don't want to have to sift through a blog post where it has 600 words and they're like, where's the answer to the question that I'm here to ask?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why also like use headings in your post, just like you would on like your website copy, going through, calling out specific things. Use those headings in your blog post and be like, these are the important things. People can skim, find their answer, and know exactly what they need to know.
Yes, absolutely. So, for business owners who feel like they don't have enough time to blog, what are some tips for staying consistent without it feeling like a massive time commitment? And what are your favorite hacks for maintaining a regular blogging schedule while also juggling a million other things?
I think the biggest thing is realizing that you don't need to put out a ton of blog content for it to be successful. So you don't have to feel like you need to write a blog post every single week or put out multiple posts a week. You can take a step back. We always suggest, like KP said earlier, starting with 2 posts a month, taking it really slow. Once you have that consistently down, if you're like, okay, I feel like I can do more, go ahead, add more, but don't feel like you have to put too much on your plate all at once. And then we really like breaking it down into smaller parts, and that's helped us stay more consistent, write it faster, maybe not feel so overwhelming. Break it down to doing keyword research. Maybe you do keyword research one day, and then the next day you outline it. So you want to outline it with all of the headings you want, any points that you want to include under those headings, write those down, because also sometimes we get to something and we're like, what is my thought on this topic? Like, I don't even know what I would say. No, so sometimes just having that outline is going to make it so much easier when we do sit down to write. It's going to make things flow a little easier and already have different like points that we can work off of and start to write on. So outlining it, I know it seems a little like high school to go back to outlining your essays, but it's really
Yeah.
going to help save a lot of time. The next day, you can actually sit down to write it, or maybe chunk out times in your schedule where you're like, I'm going to take this hour and try and sit down and write it. And if I don't get it done, I'll put another hour in my calendar the next day to sit down and do it. So we can spread that out when we have time where we can dedicate brain space to it and actually sit down and be like, the only thing I'm going to do right now is write my blog post. And then the next day you can upload it. So don't feel like you have to sit down and do the entire process all at once, because that can start to feel a little overwhelming and it can take up maybe more time than you have on any one specific day. But putting 20 minutes doing keyword research on one day and then an hour writing on another day, like that can feel a lot easier for you. And then we also would say having a quarterly bank of topics. So if you have free time, or if there's a time where you have maybe before each month or before each quarter, sitting down and being like, okay, here's the topics that I want to write. Let me do my keyword research all at once. I'm going to get all the topics. I know exactly what I need to write on, so that when you are like, all right, I have time today to write a blog post. What's my topic? There it is. Let's start outlining and writing. It can make it a lot easier. It can make it feel like there's less of that like barrier to actually start. And you already have that like little step ahead. You're like, okay, I don't have to start from scratch. I just take one step and we're already halfway there. Make it a content bank somewhere. We have ours in Airtable. We've done it in Notion before, literally just somewhere where you can list it out and work it through. And that's also a great place to sort through the different, we call them like content pillars that you have, or even categories. So like we can separate ours by, here's all the posts we want to do about blogging. Here's the ones about website. Here's the ones about brand design. So you can break it down. So if you're like, I really don't feel like writing a blog, like a blog post about blogging today, let me just skip to a website one. And I have all of these ideas and it can be a little bit easier. So honestly, take it slow. Don't feel like you have to jump in really fast, super fast. Like just take it slow. Try and get one or two out a month and break it down by process. It's going to make it feel a lot less big, especially as we're first starting, because most of us probably haven't written like long things like this since high school or college. So it is going to take a little bit of time to get used to again. But once you have that flow, I think now we're at the point where from keyword research to finishing writing the post, it's under an hour for us. So it really does become like a muscle that you just have to train. And then once you got it, you remember this is stuff that you talk about on a daily basis. You're the expert. You don't necessarily have to do a ton of research on it because it's things that you do every day. So just put that expertise forward and take it slow.
Yeah. And I love that you said breaking it up into like more manageable chunks, because I think a lot of the times nowadays we think that we just have to sit down and do something all at once. But even applying that in other aspects of your business, just breaking it up into more manageable chunks will definitely make it feel like less of a monster when you're looking at it.
Exactly. Yeah. It can feel really overwhelming when you're like, I have to write this whole article and then find photos and then upload it and then repurpose it. No, one step at a time. It'll feel like nothing by the end.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to say thank you so much to both of you for coming on here. You guys provided a lot of great information. I love that. Where can my listeners find and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can catch us on our own podcast, the Unexpected Entrepreneur Podcast. We're also at Inkpot Creative everywhere. You can also catch us at inkpotcreative.com. And then we also have a free gift for you, which is 123 creative blog post ideas just to get you started. You can find that at inkpotcreative.com/free blog post ideas.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for both of you for being on here, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of the Creative Minds Smart Money podcast. Huge thanks to KP and Jessie from Inkpot Creative for sharing their expertise on blogging. Their tips for creating sustainable content, repurposing blog posts, and staying consistent were absolute gold. Remember, blogging doesn't have to be overwhelming. It's all about starting small, staying intentional, and letting your personality shine through. Whether you're answering frequently asked questions, showcasing client projects, or optimizing for SEO, your blog is a powerful tool to attract the right audience and showcase your expertise. If you loved today's conversation, don't forget to check out KP and Jessie at Inkpot Creative or on their podcast, The Unexpected Entrepreneur. And don't miss their free gift, 123 creative blog post ideas to kickstart your blogging journey. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a fellow creative or leave a review. It helps more people discover the podcast. Until next time, keep creating, keep growing, and don't forget to have fun along the way. Farewell, fellow travelers.